Retail workers of Reddit. What is the most desperate scam a customer's tried to pull on you? Years ago, I worked at a Walmart and this guy comes in trying to return his Wii that doesn't work. I just bought this for my kids last week and it's already broken, but they won't take it back because I lost my receipt. The Wii in question was the most beat up and disgusting looking GameCube I've ever seen. Like, he found it in a landfill or something. I should also point out that I wasn't working the return desk or even a cashier. I was stocking the food department. Turns out, he was trying to talk every employee in the store into either giving him a refund or a Wii. Story 2. Worked in a bottle shop. One afternoon, a shady character entered and spent 10 minutes browsing the liquor section. I stayed at the checkout and watched him on the CCTV. He ended up shoving 2 bottles of Johnny Walker Blue down his pants and walked out. Store policy is not to confront shoplifters. That's what insurance is for. I called the police and burnt the footage onto a DVD for them to collect. About an hour later, the same guy returns with the bottles, demanding a cash refund because he, quote, purchased the wrong type. Just as I was telling him I can't do a refund without a receipt, the police walked in to collect the footage. He left with them in handcuffs. Story 3. Years ago, I worked at a small hardware store where they were constantly getting huge rolls of copper wire stolen. One day, this guy and his girlfriend come in to return a roll. I was a few months in on the returns counter. They had no receipt, and when I scanned the item for the return, it was only doing the price per foot. I couldn't figure out how to get the SKU or the price for the whole roll. Called the manager, and he comes out and right away knows there's no way these people bought a roll and returned it. So he asks when they bought it, and they say 2 weeks ago. The common response. And my manager tells them, "Oh, really? Because the last time we sold an entire roll was over 3 months ago." The guy starts to get brave and tells him, "So you're saying I stole it?" And my manager says, "Yes." They end up leaving and left the roll behind. Before they leave the store, the guy says, "I'm coming back and bringing the cops." Manager says, "Go ahead. That way you can explain to them how you stole the roll." Story 4. A guy comes in to fill his son's Adderall script. Guy is super twitchy and son as chill as could be. For all controls, we're supposed to run a report that shows everywhere in the state they filled any. Of course, the report is a mess. Multiple pharmacies, multiple scripts, multiple doctors, all the red flags. To top it off, an Adderall script within that week had been filled, so we really couldn't fill this one. Dad comes back, we tell him that we can't fill it, and Dad starts going on about how his wife must have filled it, but they need some for today, blah blah blah. We decline, and his last words to us are, "My son needs them for a birthday he has to go to today. Can't you help?" No, dude, we can't help. You're clearly taking your son's pills. Get help and stop using your son to get high on prescription drugs. I didn't even know that children could be prescribed Adderall, but after looking it up, apparently if you're over 6 years old, you can. Either way, to deprive your child of a very powerful and apparently necessary drug just for you to get high is like doubly selfish. That sucks. You're crappy dad of the year, if that's even really your kid. Moving on. Story 5. A customer brought back a jumpsuit for a refund because it had crap in it. Apparently, it had been like that when she bought it. It stank so bad, you could smell it through the taped up plastic bags that she had put it in. The levels of how impossible that would have been to be unnoticed by changing room staff, to then be put on the shop floor, to then be picked up by the customer, to being bought via a cashier still unnoticed. The worst part is some idiot on the refunds counter downstairs actually accepted it and put it on top of the trolley full of other returned items for us to put back upstairs, complete with a note stapled to it that said, "Warning, feces inside." One of the bigger WTF moments I've had in any job that I've worked. Story 6. I used to work at Best Buy. This guy came in and returned a laptop, saying that the box had some old laptop in it. He was yelling and screaming that we don't know how to do business. Manager gave him a full refund. We started to check that old laptop he brought in. It won't turn on. Looks like the motherboard was toast. We pulled the hard drive out and started checking the data. Hard drive was completely fine with everything on it. We started looking for the clues and found the pictures of the guy who returned the laptop. It was his old machine. We had all his info. Manager called him and said he has 15 minutes to bring the new laptop back or he's calling the police. That guy came in, dropped the laptop at the front desk. Never saw him again in the store. Story 7. I'd like to return this unopened pack of cigarettes I purchased earlier today at your establishment. Might be paraphrasing a little bit. I open the store every day. Hadn't seen this dude once that day. Looked at his cigarettes. It's a brand we don't carry. Asked him for a receipt to confirm he purchased them here, but he obviously didn't have one. Oh, that's fine. If you can just tell me what time you were in here today, I can look it up on our cameras to confirm your purchase. My God, the backpedaling and stuttering. I grabbed a cigarette pack and fake examined them. Wait a moment, sir. Are you sure you purchased these at this store? I don't think we carry this brand. He took the cigarettes back, came up with something about his brother must have, yada yada, and then he walked out. A tobacco store in town sells some of the brands we carry at a much cheaper price, so people like to try and do returns at our store to make a quick buck. We generally don't take any returns on tobacco, but this guy didn't even scope out his mark. Edit. Resident of Indiana. Couldn't find anything pertaining to the legality of tobacco returns in my state. If it helps, anytime the ATF drops in for a checkup, the only question we get asked is if we sell individual cigarettes. Outside of that, I've worked a few retail jobs where tobacco was sold, and I wasn't told at any of them that tobacco returns were illegal. I'm assuming it's more individual store policy on whether or not they take returns, and I've worked retail long enough to see how an employee would tell someone it's illegal, rather than against store policy, just to help avoid an argument. Not to say it might not be illegal in other states, just that I don't think it is in mine. Story 8. At my old job, they used to have sales pretty often and would also give out coupons for specific dates. For Boxing Day, they had a 30% off sale, and we'd also given out coupons that would start the next day. Lady comes in on Boxing Day, and we worked out that she'd get more of a deal if she used the coupon instead, so I offered to hold her items for her. I explicitly told her that she wouldn't be able to get the 30% off, and she decided to use the coupon instead. She comes back the next day, goes to cash to purchase her items, and gets angry because they wouldn't give her both the 30% off and let her use the coupon. She told the cashier that the person she'd spoken to the day before had told her she could do that, sees me, and says, "It was that girl who told me." I went to cash to speak to her. I was a key holder at the time, and her story changed about 3 times through the whole thing. First, she said that I told her she could combine the discounts. Then she said I never told her she couldn't combine the discounts. And then, finally, it was, well, I don't understand why I'm not able to do this. Another manager came over to help sort it out, and as I walked away, I heard her saying that I was a liar. Now, I work at Sephora, and we always get people trying to return fake products. My favorite one was when someone returned a face mask but had put a can of tuna in the box instead of the actual face mask. Story 9. I work at a movie theater. We have a $5 discount day. A customer comes over and starts telling me how she was there the prior day and that we had given them the wrong soda and her diabetic husband had drank it and suddenly had to go to the hospital to get medication to cure him. Several things wrong with that story. 1, that's not how diabetes works. You don't die from 1 sip of soda, and generally if you did, you'd have insulin to take. 2, the employee she had complained to in order to call me over had been the only concessionist the prior day, and somehow she failed to identify him when I asked her who it was. I asked her for ticket stubs or proof of purchase, and she came up with nothing. I went to the attendance for the prior day and pulled the report for the movie they claimed to have saw. To my delight, the showtime they claimed to have seen had 0 tickets sold to it. I printed the report and went back to meet them. "Yeah, sorry, looks like there were 0 tickets to that showtime." And I showed her the report. She then tried to say we sold her tickets to the wrong movie. I told her that was impossible because then she would have been in the wrong auditorium. She had no response to that. Then she spluttered that she guessed she would just go buy tickets, and I said, "Yeah, I guess so." She left. Story 10. I was working in a betting shop during the 2014 Football World Cup. We had this one really awful customer. Must have been in his 80s and always wildly inappropriate. Asking what color my underwear was, did I see someone to keep me warm tonight, etc. But I couldn't do anything as the higher-ups wanted to squeeze money from him. Anyway, the night before the final match, he comes in and tells me he wants to bet on Germany to win. I spent about 10 minutes explaining to him that as it was the final, he could no longer have a broad bet like that. Instead, he'd have to choose between a 90-minute win or winning in extra time, on penalties, etc. I showed him the odds for all the different bets, and he ended up choosing the 90-minute win. I put the bet through for him, and off he went into the night to be creepy somewhere else. The match plays out, and of course Germany wins in extra time. The next day, unnamed creepy dude comes in grinning from ear to ear and telling me how he's a winner. Oh boy. Again, I have to explain to him that his bet isn't valid as he predicted they'd win before 90 minutes, and they hadn't. Dude flies into a rage about how I'm a money-grabbing slut who's jealous of his riches and I have to pay him out or he'll call the police. I tell him to leave my store or I'll call them myself. He complies. A few days later, I come back from my lunch break to see him ranting at my cashier. I ask what the problem is and he throws me his bet slip for the World Cup. Only now he's written extra time on it in pen and is trying to get my less experienced staff member to pay him out. I tell him that when we scan bets, the computer takes an image of it. Obviously, the slip he has given to us has been altered as it doesn't match what's on the screen. I even turn the computer to show him, and that counts as fraud. Again, he leaves spouting nonsense about how women shouldn't be working anyway because they can't count or read. Next week, I get told I have to go to a meeting as I've had a complaint filed against me by a customer. The day of the meeting rolls around and I'm greeted by my area manager, security director, and creepy dude. He had phoned the customer line and said I'd refused to pay his bet and taken the money for myself. We ended up bringing up the CCTV of the night he originally placed the bet, complete with audio, to prove without a shadow of a doubt that he was in the wrong. Dude won't accept this and starts screaming that we're all thieves, we faked the video, and threatening to get a lawyer. Security director escorts him off the premises and he is banned from all of our chains indefinitely. The kicker is, if his bet had won, it would have been a whopping 55 euros. First of all, oh my gosh, nostalgia wave, I can't believe that World Cup was 10 years ago. Mario Götze of Germany hits the game-winning goal in stoppage time against Argentina, I believe it was. Dang, decade. Anyway, back to the story. The fact that this guy is willing to commit actual fraud for 55 euros, he clearly has, cognitive issues, let's just say. He's lucky that he didn't get arrested and just banned from the premises. Guys, don't commit fraud. Do I really have to say that? Story 11. I worked at a Jewel many, many years ago. Opening shift as a cashier. A man comes through with two 24-packs of Pepsi. It's opening shift, so at that time we count our registers and confirm they've got the correct opening cash. We didn't carry too much cash, and we all know how much is in the drawer to start. He ends up paying with a $100 bill for these sodas. I counted back his change with mostly 20s. All the 20s I had just counted. There was no more 20s that I could have given him. And I don't know how he did this, but he shuffled them in his hand and showed me that I supposedly shortchanged him. Now, I knew immediately that he was a piece of crap. My store wasn't crappy, so I told him that I would call the manager over to have them double check the register. The manager came, counted down the register, and explained that the drawer was balanced, which means I didn't shortchange anybody. But if for whatever reason the drawer turned up $20 overnight, we would give him a call. The manager tries to take his info down and he asks for his name, and the guy thinks about it and says, Steve. Bush. F you, Steve Bush. You're a sack of lying crap who tries to scam 16-year-olds out of $20. Edit to add. Yes, I'm well aware that money isn't my money, but I took that as a personal offense. When I left that day, I called my now husband mad as hell. I felt angry because he must have assumed I looked like an idiot that would hand him extra money, or something of that nature. Also, he can't actually scam Jewel without scamming me first. Just because it isn't my money didn't mean he didn't try to scam me out of $20. We're responsible for how much money we lose. Wow, this happened to a lot of you. I didn't realize how common this was. People are crap, huh? LOL. Story 12. Just yesterday, I had a till tapper / quick change artist try to money shuffle me for what would have been a grand sum of $5. Pissed him off when I wouldn't play his game. Next best was someone calling wanting to know if we had spare empty boxes for Xbox consoles, because he's wanted to prank his kid and give him an empty box. I know very well he wanted to try to stuff the box with who knows what and attempt a return. Of course, the folks at customer service check such boxes for actual product and match serials to those on the box. Story 13. Oh boy. Back in high school when I worked part-time at a KFC, there was this one fat man who would come in, order a 2-piece quarter pack, and then claim we'd forgot his chicken. Like, if we turned around to fetch his drink at the end of the order, he would open the box, take out the chicken pieces, and hide them in his pockets. Hot chicken, right in his pockets. I got so fed up with everyone just giving him extra chicken all the time that I demanded he turned out his pockets one day when he tried to pull it, and wow, lo and behold, this guy has his pockets full of drumsticks. So 2 things here. Number 1, would you even eat the chicken that's been in your nasty pockets covered in lint and germs and who knows what else? And number 2, piping hot greasy chicken would burn the hell out of your legs. What are you thinking, dude? Story 14. I'm not usually on register, but when the store I used to work, PetSmart, at first opened, they would send out coupons to specific people if they had pet perks in an email. Well, someone shared their coupon online, which was for a free bag of dog food. What preceded was a mass of people coming in the next few weeks attempting and succeeding to redeem the coupon, as we didn't want to start off on the wrong foot after newly opening. Anyway, I get put on register and this woman comes through with 12 bags of dog food and 12 coupons. We can't actually do that on the same purchase, and usually when someone does that, having 2 coupons, we just do 2 different transactions. It's whatever. But this lady has 12, and I'm lazy, so I call my manager over to deal with it. The manager tries to explain to the woman that the coupons aren't technically valid as it's for a specific person for 1 bag. Woman keeps pushing on the fact that she physically has the coupons, so they must work, and acts like she doesn't understand why they won't. Eventually, manager says, "You know what? We'll do it, but only for 6 bags. Woman throws a fit and leaves the entire cart. Could've got 6 bags free, but nope. Manager said she'd seen the woman doing the exact same thing at Dollar General the day before. Second story, and not me, but same store. Occasionally, we had a spokesperson for a few brands of dog food come in, usually weekly, that would set up a booth at our store, but would do the same with other stores in the area. We had a coupon come out where you could get a about $15 box of wet cat food, about 16 cans, for free, or pay the difference. She came through with a $30 box, and the cashier caught it and said, "Well, you have to pay the difference or get a box that costs $15. The woman was like, "Oh no, all the other stores let me have it for free. You can do it too." Cashier says, "Nope, it's not how we do it here. You'll have to pay the difference or buy cheaper." The woman demands the manager and gets the GM, who backs the cashier up. Difference or cheaper? Woman gets huffy and goes and grabs a cheaper box, about 25, and expects the cashier to free it out. Cashier is like, "LOL, nope." I guess the woman is either frustrated or embarrassed at this point, because when cashier points out, difference or cheaper, she gets huffy again and will pay the damn difference. Edit, I forgot to mention, the second lady also brought in previous receipts from other stores to prove that they'd freed out more expensive food. I'm thinking one store did it, either on purpose or accident, and since she has the receipt, she can force them because the other stores did it. Story 15. I work at a major cell phone retailer. I once had a man come in with his wife to do an upgrade to whatever the new iPhone was at the time. While they were sitting in the store working with one of my reps, I was in management at the time, the wife starts getting text messages from someone claiming to be her husband's mistress. This did not go over well. They took it outside before it got overly nasty, and we all assumed they were gone for good. Not so. The husband comes back in, alone. He finishes upgrading his phone, priorities, and left. The very next day, he tried to return the phone, claiming that we had sold him one with screen damage. He brings it in, and it looks like someone took a diamond ring or something to the screen and scratched the heck out of it. Now, we have a strict open the box and hand it to the customer before they leave policy to avoid these situations. I was able to pull tape, show the customer where he held the phone for a good 5 minutes without pointing out any flaws, and tell him that my company offers no warranty on that brand, even if it's bad out of the box. And especially when he didn't show it to us before leaving the store. I suggested he take it up with the manufacturer if he truly believed the phone was damaged out of the box. He did. Right there in the store, he called them. They also told him to kick rocks. The best part? I was new to management, so I didn't have a manager name tag yet. He asked to speak to the manager, and I got to give him my best evil grin and say, "I am the manager." He left after that, and we never saw him again. Story 16. Not traditional retail, but had a client swear she did not receive 2 packages from me and was refusing to pay the invoice for the second package from more than 6 months prior. I knew she was lying, but she was extremely rude and insistent. I was able to go back on all records and was able to find both a photo of the first package on her front doorstep, super lucky as that's not our normal delivery procedure to have photographed evidence, and a signature of receipt for the second one with her name very clearly signed, dated 4 days later. I emailed the evidence and never heard back from her again. Not even an apology email or phone call, which just confirmed she knew she was lying. Story 17. Customer shows me a coupon on his phone. Several problems with this. It's against corporate policy to scan coupons off the phone. There's a sheet of paper taped to the counter with all the rules, and it's like the 6th one on it. When my cow-towing ass munch of a manager scanned the stupid effing thing anyways, the system rejected the coupon, saying that the coupon was an issue to him. The offer that the coupon was for was different than the offer shown on his phone. There is an Instagram stamp on the coupon on his phone. Also, customer tries to return some makeup without a receipt. I look it over and tell her I can't return it. She tries to say that we have to since we sell it here and whatnot. I tell her I can't return it because it has a security label from the grocery store that's 5 miles down the road. She books it out and leaves said makeup behind. Story 18. Had a guy try to return 2 Sega CD games for cash. Problem was, they were wrapped in saran wrap, and then had the gall to exchange them for properly wrapped games so he could go across the street to Walmart and return them for cash there. Him and his buddy must have really needed beer and weed money. Also, have seen people try on new shoes, put the old ones in the box, and walk out with the new ones. Had an old man act like he was pulling a gun out of his waist just to get away from loss prevention. And one of my favorites, had the 2 women grab a bag from luggage and put all the rolls of film in the bag, then try to ditch the bag because we were following them. Story 19. I was working at Buckle for a while in college. They offer 10% military discount with photo ID. Lady comes to my register on Black Friday with an alleged photocopy of her husband's DD-214. I kindly told her that would not be accepted and she was not eligible for a discount unless she could produce dependent ID or an official card. She was pissed, and I gave 0 Fs. Guess who paid full price? Story 20. I used to work at a game store a little more than 10 years ago. Once had a woman come in dressed fairly trendy and ask for 2 PlayStation Portables, PSP, 2 Xbox 360s, and a handful of games and accessories. My store is pretty slow, so this would be a pretty big sale for the day, and I was excited about it. She goes to pay and hands me a credit card which was not laminated and appeared to be printed out on a home color printer. I told her it wouldn't work and she said just scan it anyway. So I scanned her fake credit card which clearly did not have a magnetic strip and it didn't work, of course. She told me to just put the numbers in on the computer. I refused and she asked why, seemingly legitimately confused. I told her I just couldn't. She told me she would be back with cash. I put everything back on the shelves. She did not return. Story 21. The store was open until midnight, the last 2 nights of the financial year calendar. Apparently, the store thought someone might come in at 11:59, the last chance they had to deck out their entire office with new laptops and chairs and crap. After about 9 p.m., the store was pretty much a complete ghost town. By 10 p.m. to 11 p.m., the store was the cleanest it ever was since it was built. On this one night, the phone rang at about 11:30 p.m. The guy wanted to know if we were still open because he wanted to buy something specific. It turned out we had it in stock and he told me, several times, that he was going to get out of his pajamas, get dressed, and come down to the store. I was like, sure, the item will be at the front counter whenever you're here to collect it. So he turns up and tells me again that he had to get out of his pajamas, get dressed, and come down to the store to pick up this item. It was about 11:45 p.m. by this point, and so I just told him how much it was going to cost, and then he asked for a discount. I said, why? He said, for being your last customer of the evening. I told him no. There's no reason for giving out that kind of discount, and besides, we weren't closed yet. There might be other customers, you know? He might not have been the last one that night, and besides, it costs what it costs. He told me again that he had to get out of his pajamas, get dressed, and come to the store to buy this item. He paid full price for all his troubles. Story 22. I was working at a place that has soft serve as part of the menu. I was working one day and a lady came up to the counter and said something along the lines of, "Hey, I'm really sorry. My daughter dropped her ice cream and she's really sad about it. Do you think you could give me another?" I was about to, then realized an important fact. The ice cream was broken that day and we weren't selling any. I looked back at her and told her that it must not be from us because of the machine. She turned bright red and mumbled, "Oh, then I guessed it must be from Dairy Queen or something," and left quickly. Nice try, lady. Story 23. Kmart returns counter. I had a guy try to return a CD with a receipt. The shrink wrap had been sliced and the CD taken out. He claimed it was like that when he bought it. I told him I couldn't return it for cash but could swap it for the same thing. He went to get a new CD and brought some other artist. I told him it had to be the exact same thing. I had the electronics employee bring up the right CD. As I checked that they were the same and told him I would give him a new one, a smile grew on his face, which quickly melted away when I took out a knife and cut open the plastic on the CD. Nope, you can't return that one later. Another scammer that I actually caught was this guy who was paralyzed on the left half of his body. He walked slowly around the store, dropping stuff and drooling. Never did find out if he was actually paralyzed or just part of the scam. One day, I caught him bagging OxyClean in his cart. Notified LP and she watched him. He went through self-checkout and told me he bought the OxyClean in electronics. LP called electronics, no such sale was made. I think she let him go that time, but the next time he came in, he got a police report. This one was an insider job. The guy who worked in electronics also did layaway. One of the service desk girls would put a giant bag of dog food in layaway. Then the electronics guy would empty the bag and fill it with expensive electronics. Turns out they'd been getting away with this for years. Then the LP staff changed, and the new lady knew how to police the place. Story 24. I've been in and out of retail for 10 years, and one time at a part-time gig that I have a full-time job too, this couple, a man and a woman, came in looking sketchy as all hell. Definitely had a drug problem. They were scanning each and every register looking for gift cards, particularly those ones where they were prepaid like Visa or MasterCard. I knew their game. I've dealt with this before. The woman came to my register. Originally, they wanted to go to self-checkout, but I told them they cannot purchase gift cards there. They can, I just wanted to catch them, lol. The woman comes up to me, purchases $400 worth of gift cards, and when it's time to pay, I ask her for her ID because she wants to use her credit card. The ID she had and who she was were two different people. The woman in the driver's license had no tattoos on her face. This woman had stars below her eye. I told her, "This is not you. I will not sell these to you, and I will call the police." She booked it out of there. Unfortunately, the man got away with it because he had purchased his at another register before the woman came to me. And would you believe I got in trouble for doing that? Story 25. I work at an Italian deli/specialty market. It's family owned and has a super tight-knit cast of employees. It's also in a rougher part of town. One day, a presumably homeless man came into the store. No big deal, we're by the shelter and a lot of the homeless folks are friendly and just getting something nice to eat. However, this lady was clearly out of her mind. Whether it was drugs or mental illness wasn't clear. Honestly, probably both. She was in the store for an hour, just harassing employees and customers. Eventually, the owner, the Italian man after which the store is named, had to intervene. He firmly asked the lady to leave, but she had a surprising response. "Oh, it's okay. I work here." Imagine the surprise on the owner's face. He certainly didn't remember hiring her. Dumbfounded, he told her that was impossible, since he's in charge of the hiring, to which she responded, "Oh, are you hiring?" Honestly, I've got to respect a good gambit. Unfortunately for her, it didn't seem to pan out. I don't have any new coworkers yet. Story 26. I once had a dude try to score a free iPhone. He came into the department I worked in and started describing this vague iPhone to us, saying he'd lost it in here earlier. No other details were given, like phone case or specific color, just an iPhone. Further questions were asked about where he thinks he might have left it in here, and he just went quiet and said, "It's fine, actually. Maybe somebody else has it," and left. Our opinion is he knew that sometimes stores will keep people's phones that they found until the owners come back, and then they hand over the phone. He wanted to score a free iPhone. So I actually worked a job like this once before at a rec center where people would, lose phones. They go to play basketball or something and they just leave their phone or their iPod in the gym. And so the staff would basically have this drawer of collected lost belongings up front. And people would come in all the time saying, "Hey, I lost an iPhone," and basically doing exactly what this guy did, just hoping that whoever happened to be working at the time would just look in the desk, see that there was an iPhone there, not ask for any further questions or details about the product, and just hand it over. So this is a pretty common con. Story 27. I worked at a corporate supermarket here in Australia as a front-end supervisor a few years ago. This particular night, though, I was just a plebe working the smoke shop, or service desk, and a woman approached the counter wanting to make a return. It is important to mention that she had seen better days. She was in her early to mid-30s, tout skinny, and just your typical Aussie bogan type. The items she wanted to return were ink cartridges. From memory, it was about 3 or 4. I did the usual procedure of asking for a receipt, and she told me she had phoned earlier that day and spoke to someone who said she didn't need one. Red flag number 1. She explained her story about how they were the wrong ones and that she just wanted to refund them as she didn't need them anymore. Fair enough, maybe she bought other cartridges from somewhere else. I asked her if she knew who she spoke with, as I would then be able to confirm with them and get the process started. I wasn't going to discredit her in the beginning and gave her the benefit of the doubt. and there may have been more to the story than I knew, such as a manager pre-approving it, etc. But we generally left notes about everything, and this was not mentioned, so it was already starting to become suspicious. Of course, she didn't recall the name. Okay, fine. I start the process anyway, as we did sell this particular brand, but upon scanning all of them, none of them came up in our system. Not one. I tried once before explaining the situation, and then all hell broke loose. She accused me of lying and telling me that we all don't know how to do our jobs because she bought them here no less than a few days prior. Red flag number 2. Something would not be discontinued so quickly, especially something that sells as much as ink cartridges. We asked her if she can recall the day or prove she purchased them from our store or her bank account, because we can then bring the receipt up from the back end. She then ranted about paying in cash and not remembering the day exactly. At this point, I had involved the supervisor because it was escalating to that point anyway, who explained the same thing I had to her, which was that we wouldn't be able to process a refund, especially in cash as per her request, because she could not prove she purchased them from us and they were not scanning in our system, which meant that we never stocked them in the first place. After much back and forth and her hurling abuse at us, we offered her store credit to the value of the original purchase, which I can't remember how we figured it out. I think it was just to the value of what similar stock we had, because she said all she wanted to do was some food shopping, which is why we offered her store credit. Then her mind changed from wanting to do shopping to wanting cash, because that is how she paid. After explaining 100 times that we weren't able to offer her cash, she agreed to the store credit. We processed it for her and she went in the store to do her supposed shopping. After about 20 minutes or so, she came back with gift cards and only gift cards to the value of what was credited. Oh boy, red flag number 3. You cannot purchase gift cards with store credit for obvious reasons. That was the end of it for her. She absolutely lost it at us and called us every name under the sun as she walked off with the store credit cards and threatening to call the head office the next day. Our theory was, of course, drugs. Gift cards are apparently a common way of buying drugs, according to my then supervisor. I tend to believe this because of her persistence in receiving the refund in cash, not having a receipt, the items not scanning, plus it fit her profile. She was very sketchy, irritable, and looked like she was in need of 1,000 years of sleep. As it turns out, she did talk to another supervisor from day shift, who actually told her that she could bring the items in and we would be able to assess the situation, which isn't a common practice but happened nonetheless. I guess she wasn't lying about everything. Edited to add a couple of extra points. I don't recall if anything ever came of her complaint, but we probably ended up giving her some sort of compensation. Corporate effing sucks. Story 28. I witnessed one. I was waiting to get my hair cut at my local barber and this woman hobbles in. She had a bandage on her head, a bandage over her eye, her arm in a sling, and a cane. She sat down and launched into this horrible sob story about how she had been in this terrible accident and had spent all her money at the hospital and her car was totaled and now she had no way to get back home, etc. And of course asked for money. My barber was entirely unperturbed and said, "Okay, just let me finish with my customers." The lady, thinking she'd hit a score, sat patiently as he did 5 haircuts. Then he calmly walked over to the phone and called the police. Boss. Story 29. I used to work for a store that did trade-ins for old gaming systems. One day, a man comes in trying to trade in his Xbox 360 to get credit for the, at the time, new Xbox One. We're pretty lax about the condition of the product. As long as it turns on, we'll take it. I'm talking to the man as I'm taking the Xbox out of the bag he brought it in. He's pleasant. I open the box up and cockroaches just come crawling out. I almost drop it, and I tell the guy we can't accept this. Boy, does he get mad. He has the gall to ask where in our terms does it specifically say they can't accept this. The manager gets involved and he eventually leaves, only to come back the next day to try it on another employee. I radio the manager when I recognize him. Guy puts up a fuss again, and the manager eventually tells him he'll give him the trade-in credit if he takes his bug-ridden machine with him and never brings it back. I still get creepy crawlies thinking about those cockroaches. Look, I know it's awkward, I know it's annoying, but we can't let these people win, guys. Managers in retail all over the world, don't give in. Don't let people with these stupid punk pranks con you into giving store credit or refunds. I know it's easier to just rid your hands of it, but there's no way that we're going to be able to fully abolish this or at least severely limit its existence unless you start pushing back a little bit. This guy never should have gotten store credit. That's horrible. Story 30. We had some members of the traveling community pull into our car park one summer. Guy comes to the till to buy 2 patio kits at 50 euros each. I tell him the total is 100 euros, and he says he bought one for $50 the day before in another branch. I say, yes, but you're buying 2, so it's doubled. He then starts to argue that I'm overcharging him. This went on for 10 minutes, with me explaining that he's buying 2, so it's more expensive than 1. His entire plan was to attempt to hold up the queue to a point where I'd give him one for free by acting like a dumb F. Once he realized the queue had disappeared, due to it being a effing huge DIY store with multiple cashiers, he suddenly clicked and paid up, never to be seen again. Story 31. Not super dramatic, but kind of sad. I was working the register in a mall department store, and policy was to only take returns without tags if they had a receipt. Middle-aged woman comes up and says she wants a refund on some clothes. She dumps out what amounts to dirty laundry of clothes that haven't been sold for at least a year and a half. I asked if there was anything wrong, as being well worn, fit couldn't have been the issue. Lady says no, but that the owner, her son, is in jail now and doesn't need them. She wanted full retail price, which she was happy to tell me what that should be. I tried politely enforcing the policy, but she wasn't having it. Called for a manager, who, to my dismay, gave her what she asked for. That was more than I was going to earn over 2 nights of work. I guess they needed the money more than the store did, but I couldn't believe the gall of somebody to legally rob a store like that. Story 32. I worked at Arby's as a teenager. This was around 1990. A guy comes in, orders a sandwich and fries, and wants to pay with a check. This being the olden days, people paid with check all the time. But this guy tries to tell me it's easier for the bank if he makes it out to himself instead of to Arby's because, well, he fired off some convoluted, off-the-cuff bullcrap designed to gish-gallop me into buying the story. I was young and naive, but not that naive. He got mad when I denied him. Called me stupid. I asked if he'd like to talk to the manager, and he agreed. 3 minutes later, my manager is giving the guy stink eye, and the dude leaves with no sandwich. Nice try, a-hole. Story 33. When I worked on a checkout, a woman pulled a barcode label from a container of $4.10 fruit and stuck it over the barcode of a $25 container of medjool dates. She pretended that she didn't do it. Another time, a man carried a $30 bag of dog food to the customer service counter without paying for it and asked for a refund. My manager gave it to him, even though we both knew he had stolen it while we watched him. Oh, and another time, a group of people were using fake credit cards to steal. Not sure exactly how it worked, but they ended up typing in a different card number into the EFTPOS terminal. While another dude tried to distract you. These guys were super friendly and chatty and probably thought I was young and dumb, but I caught them trying to take off with about $500 worth of groceries. They were all like, just let us go and get some cash out. We'll be back soon to pay. They never returned, and my manager gave me a box of chocolates for picking up on it. Proudest moment of my retail career. Story 34. When I worked at Borders, we had this one couple that came in one day with probably like 30 books they wanted to return. They said they were all gifts and they didn't have the receipt for them, which was fine because we did do returns like that for store credit. I start scanning the books and they are not showing up in our system, which is a problem because we couldn't do a return if they are not in the system. This wasn't super unusual because that happens sometimes with books that are special orders, but as I'm going through them, I can see that a couple of them have those little color stickers that thrift stores use to indicate the price of the books. Out of all the books they brought, I think like maybe 4 or 5 of them were in our system. They seem really upset and are begging me if there is anything I could do because they were hoping to use the credit for Christmas gifts for their kids. Unfortunately, there was nothing I could do because if they didn't show up, there was no way we could accept them. I put what I could on a gift card and told them that maybe they should try selling them on eBay. They said, yeah, I guess, and left the store with defeated looks on their faces, hauling their books back with them. My guess is they had this idea of going to a thrift store and buying a bunch of books that were in good shape and try to return them for full price to get cash or store credit. It wasn't that bad of an idea, and a lot of people make a living flipping stuff like that on eBay now, but they didn't know that we didn't accept just any old book for a return. I felt really bad for them and wished I could do something more to help them, but I was a broke 18-year-old kid working a minimum wage job. Story 35. I'm a customer service manager at my store, and have been for 2.5 years, so I'm not exactly wet behind the ears. Every once in a while, I get a call from someone claiming to be NCR, the company who repairs our registers. They always start the same. We've been getting an error message from your store that your money services registers are out of sync. Usually I just say, nice try, and hang up. However, one night the store was dead. I was ahead on my closing stuff. I got the call. I pretended to be dumb and played along, telling them I was doing what he said. Stupid stuff that doesn't actually do anything. Reset the pin pad, reboot the register, type in a code that prints a slip. So after about 10 minutes, I finally break the news to him that I knew it was a scam. He goes off yelling, "I told your ass we're updating the effing register, you tucking dumbass." Gotta love the spontaneous combustion of a rage quit when a conner gets conned and realizes that they've been duped at their own game. Yeah, screw that guy. Story 36. I've had 2 instances of a customer trying to pull a scam on me. The first one, I had a young customer come in, chose one of the most expensive items we had, and then to pay with it, he first gave me $200 cash, and then said he had his father's card. We don't require any ID when you're paying with card, obviously, but we do have to take the card off you to do it ourselves. I did this. He complained, but gave it to me. No surprises, it didn't work. He pay waived it once for the maximum non-PIN amount, tried it again, and it didn't work. He said he had the PIN code written down so he could insert it. It didn't work with any of the accounts on the card. He called his dad to ask, but he didn't pick up, which he did in front of me, and I could see his phone when brought up to his ear, and it was open on the main screen. Nothing had been dialed. He tried everything for about half an hour. Nothing worked. He said he's meeting his dad soon anyway, so he'll come back. I refunded all the money, never saw him again. Another one isn't as bad, but I had a customer switch the sale tag from an item on sale to an item not on sale that he wanted, but our payment system requires a specific code to enter to apply a discount, and that code does not work for verified SKUs. He ended up willingly paying full price anyway. Our store's refund policy states that if you're unhappy with your purchase, you can refund it to any store in the state. We had a couple who would steal a pair from one store, buy the same from another, and refund the stolen pair to a third one. They did this for months. They were caught by one of our staff members because the boyfriend brought up the receipt on his phone for the return because the SKU they were trying to refund didn't match what their receipt in the system said. While our staff member was reading it, he got a text that popped up at the top that read, "Tell her to move the side so I can open the cabinet." Busted! That's all I gotta say. Moving on. Story 37. I worked at a place that sold timber, roofing iron, etc. One Saturday morning, this guy comes in and wants a couple of bags of cement, so I ring up the sale, and then go to load up the order. He tells me not to worry, and that he will do it, so I explain that it is my job to do it. Then, when I reached for the first one, he stands between me and the bag. So again, I insist that I have to load the concrete. It isn't an option. At this point, he gets quite aggressive with yelling and arm waving, etc. So I go inside to find the boss, and just as we come back out, he reaches down, goes to pick up the bag, and throws his back out. He's writhing around on the floor for a while, then demands an ambulance, and tells my boss that I refused to help him load the bags and now he's going to sue us for millions. What he didn't know is that a lot of people tried to steal the cement, so there were 2 security cameras pointing right at him the whole time, recording everything he said and did, including a long discussion with his wife about how we would pay him a stack of cash to keep this out of court and so on. The company didn't say a word about the tapes until just before we had to be in court, to make sure that he spent as much money on his lawyer as possible. Story 38. People take receipts from trash outside or inside of establishments and look for items on the receipts they can steal. Usually things you can stuff into a code and get 5+ USD for. What they do is go trash diving, get a nice list of possible items to steal, and go smash stores around you, or if they're ballsy enough, steal from the store itself. After they get the receipt and the items, they go to cashiers to attempt returns. If they're smart, which they usually are not, they aim for the max cash return possible. After 10 USD or so, many stores make you take store credit or insist you return to the card it was purchased from. So thieves will do tons of returns at tons of locations to get $100 or whatever the goal is. I was made aware of this after watching my manager eyeball and call out a thief, ask her to wait, check the camera, and confirm that the receipt didn't belong to the person who was attempting to return 2 rolls of tin foil. She put her hand on the items and asked her to leave. The woman buckled and left without asking why or asking for the items back. She told me the scheme and I was impressed at the effort. Fast forward some months and I have an elderly man return some pills with a crumpled receipt. I don't know why, but my suspicion meter was raised. It wasn't raised enough for me to call bullcrap, and the receipt was from another store, so I couldn't just hop on the camera archive and investigate without roping someone else in at another store. I proceeded the return cause whatever, old man got the wrong pills and had to find his crumpled receipt, which he actually kept because that's what old men and women do, right? Wrong. Mother effer stopped to check the small trash bin near the store entrance on the way out, checking for receipts about 10 feet away from me. I think I summoned my hiring manager when I said, "Excuse me?" in the sharpest tone possible because he dropped everything and scuttled his senior ass out of there as fast as possible. So blatant, I was offended by that more than the theft he got away with. Raw desperation, though, would be the guy trying to steal sausages. When I caught him, he said, "I'm hungry." God damn it, those words will ring in my ears for a while. Story 39. I work at a movie theater. Once, someone called us claiming they were our big-name soda vendor and that they needed our account number to complete our order because there's an issue with payment, or something. This was a few years ago. I'm foggy on the details. This was so obviously a bullcrap call since they never call us, and they know our account number. We email our orders in and they confirm, and any payment issues they contact our corporate office about. I called them out on it and hung up. Also, all the idiots that try to attempt to use MoviePass fraudulently in one way or another, can't wait for that company to die. Such a pain in the ass. Story 40. Had a guy come to the bowling alley I worked at wanting to play in our arcade. You have to put money on a card to play the games, cause we have card swipers on all our games and tickets go straight to the card. He walks into the redemption store I'm in and goes, "Hey man, just put $20 in the teller and it took my money and it's saying I didn't put anything in. Can you give me a card with $20 on it?" Well, that's weird. Let's check it out. I grab a manager and walk over to the teller where the manager proceeds to open it up and take out the cash box, and would you look there, not a single bill. Weird. Do these other tellers work? Yeah, bud. All the tellers work just fine. Story 41. Had a customer who would send her aide to the store. Amongst the groceries bought were 2 bags of frozen shrimp. About a week later, the aide would return with a Ziploc bag with the one she didn't want, which was less than a single bag, for a refund on both of them. We allowed it, and it happened a couple of more times until the aide came in and explained to us that she would constantly take them out of the freezer, de-thaw the whole bag, eat some, and refreeze it, and said that she would be okay, in fact happy, if we said no. So we did, and the lady files a complaint against us weekly, now trying to get a $10 gift card for her complaint. Had a guy argue with my associate about a Play-Doh feature that had a factory sign on it that said 50 cents, and the cent symbol that it meant half a cent each and wanted 2 for a penny. He was doing it out of spite. One of my egghead peer assistant managers was baffled and said okay, but when my store manager approached him at the register, he told him he was not right and to keep his penny. He didn't want it, lol. Story 42. I was a cashier in a grocery store, and a lady came up to my register with a grocery cart full of your typical meth-making supplies, lithium batteries, Drano, etc., and even asked me for some dry ice. I knew what was up as soon as her scabby ass walked up, so I rang her crap up, knowing damn well that someone was going to end up putting it all back. She pulls out a single check to pay. The check had a man's name on it, a different last name than her ID, and the signature on the check didn't look like the man's name at all. So I told her I couldn't accept the check. She proceeded to argue and demand a manager, who I happily called over. He told her that there was no way we were accepting this check unless he came in himself to say it was legit. She asked us if a phone call would work and dialed a number as we told her no. She handed my manager the phone and some guy who was clearly effed up answered. We told him wrong number and hung up, then told her to leave before we called the police. She left, and then came back later in the night. Guess who was the only cashier that stayed that late, and tried the same crap again with the exact same check without realizing I was the same cashier that told her to kick rocks earlier. When she tried to pull the same crap, I just told her to leave and never come back. She started demanding a manager and I just called the police, right in front of her, and told her they were on the way, but I couldn't keep her there against her will. She left on her own. F meth heads. Story 43. I work a retail job and a customer, as they were grabbing their things to leave, knocked over a piece of glassware she bought, which broke. The cashier working immediately gave her a refund. Flash forward 3 days later, and she calls demanding cash because she didn't ever get a refund for it. We ask if she has a receipt, and she tells us the cashier took it from her. That same day, she comes in trying to return items she doesn't have the receipt for, but has other receipts, one of which including the broken glassware, which, when scanned, shows it's been refunded. Story 44. I work at a cafe inside a big store, and we have some regulars. Some really nice and some not so much. This one lady, we have dubbed her the breadstick lady, comes in probably every other day. She gets the same order every single day she comes in. 2 breadsticks, like a little pan of them. And she's got to the point where she will walk into the store, hold up 2 fingers, and we know to throw them in the oven since they take about 10 minutes to make. We also sell drinks, which can be found at the registers to check out groceries too. So she will buy the breadsticks and then grab 2 or 3 cups from a register and not pay for them. And every time we ask to see the receipt for the cups, and she asks, "I thought the breadsticks were a combo. 2 breakfasts and 3 drinks?" And every day the answer is no. It's crazy to see how many times she tries this and continues to fail, but continues to try as well. Story 45. I ran the gun counter at a store. One day a sketchy guy came in to buy a handgun. I didn't like the way he was acting, and the way he was answering my questions about what type of firearm he was looking for. He decided to buy a gun. I decided that I was not going to sell him a gun. My store is strict about this. If I didn't feel comfortable, I could deny the sale, and there's nothing he could do. He could call managers and HQ and complain, but they will always side with me. He hands me his ID to start the paperwork. I always let them start the process so that I have names and addresses. His name was real familiar. I had sold him a gun the day before, but it wasn't him. I let him completely fill out the form and compared it to what I had from the day before. I asked him how he liked the gun he purchased yesterday. That took him by surprise, and I knew it was happening. I called the code words to have management call the police without suspicion. The man was using his father's identification to purchase his gun. He was a junior, but I was going to run a check on the senior. The police arrived and the fear washed over his face. They put him in cuffs before even speaking to me. They knew who he was the second they saw him and knew he was not allowed to touch guns. I showed them the ID and the paperwork. The guy is now in prison for lying on federal documents, violent felon in possession of a handgun, and identity theft. The next day, the police came back and told me that he admitted to trying to buy the gun to kill his wife and son. I had a little bit of a breakdown at work and sat down in the break room for about an hour just thinking about the incident. Story 46. I own a board game store. We sell board games and card games. That's it. We're in a part of town where we deal with plenty of sketchy-looking people trying to steal from us, or sell us junk, or scam us. Happens 3 or 4 times a week. One day, a nice-looking kid came in with one of those cloth guitar case/backpacks on. He looks around for a minute and approaches the counter. Me. Hey man, need a hand with something? Him. Looks around a bit. Yeah, I'd like to return this. Me. Not sure what this is. Return what? Him. Pulls off guitar case. This guitar. Me. Looking around at all the board games. You didn't buy that here. We don't sell guitars. Him. I'm pretty sure I bought it here. Me. As the guy who buys all the product for the store, I'm pretty sure you didn't. Him. I swear I did. Me. Do you have a receipt? Him. I'm pretty sure you didn't give me one. Me. I'm also pretty sure I didn't give you one, because we sell effing board games, not guitars. Now get out of here. Story 47. Saddest scam I ever had to deal with when I managed a CD store. Lady comes in and buys 10 top 10 CDs and 10 blank CDs. There are multiple signs that say, once you leave the store with a CD, you can't return it. And it was printed on the receipt. And just to be triple sure, I mentioned it as I was ringing up the sale. Of course, a few hours later, she came back with the 10 original CDs and said her kids did not like them and she wanted her money back. I say no. She gets angry. I say no again. She threatens to call the cops, etc., etc., etc. Eventually, she admits to her amazingly complicated scheme and starts crying, literally, about how she spent every cent of her rent and food money, and the 3 kids and 2 dogs were going to starve, etc. She was wailing and thrashing, and the tears were pouring down her face. At about this point, I reminded her that I could see the car she pulled up in, a Lexus, and she was wearing about $15,000 worth of jewelry, and she had paid for the CDs with an American Express Gold card. She then said that I would hear from her lawyers and quietly walked out of the store. Story 48. A customer wanted 5 $99 tablets. I don't think anything of this because it happens a lot. I offer a $10 warranty and her eyes light up. But she wants separate transactions now. Again, no issue. She takes out $200 bills from her purse. I notice right away they don't look right. I get them in my hand and they're just off. Close, but nothing quite right, so I refuse them. Yeah, should have called the police, but I was shocked in the moment. She then says she got them in change. I can tell she's Russian or Eastern European by looks and accent, and I say, yeah, we don't have bigger bills here. The 100s come from banks and it doesn't matter anyway. And she leaves. I had to teach her to get big change in fake bill transactions, but at least she picked up fast. Story 49. I was a pharmacy technician for Walgreens. You'd think it's medicine, not retail. You'd think that people would respect your position since you're handling the medicine that could very much keep them alive. You'd think that people wouldn't treat their meds as if they were just getting a hamburger at McDonald's. Well, you'd think wrong. I had a lady call me to check the price of her prescription. I told her it was $50. She proceeded to tell me that it was $35 last month, so I had to explain to her that her insurance coverage had changed with a new year and that she might want to contact the insurance for an explanation of benefits. Not 5 minutes later, my pharmacist gets a call. Apparently, one of the pharmacy technicians called this patient a female dog on the phone, and they now want at least $15 off her prescription. The fact that you would go out of your way to potentially threaten the job, career, and very livelihood of someone you've never met just blows my mind. If I didn't have a reputation for being really well liked by my patients, I would have been fired so that you could save $15. Well, F you and your insulin lady. You made me realize that I shouldn't go to pharmacy school, and I'm a happy programmer now. Story 50. I work in a high-end jewelry store that does jewelry repair on site. I had a lady come in and drop off an older 80s-style Omega chain for a simple solder and fix. We have our customer sign the envelope that we write a description of the piece, and then they sign the same envelope when they pick up their merchandise and are satisfied with the work. This woman saw what I wrote and then signed the bottom, no problem. When she picked up her chain, she was ecstatic and said it was the best work she's ever seen. She pays for the repair and signs the envelope, agreeing that the work was all in order. She leaves. 10 minutes later, she calls saying we switched her chain. I'm like, look, lady, we haven't carried this type of chain in over 10 years because no one buys them. I wouldn't even have a chain to give you. Also, we have cameras in the store, including the jeweler's room. Please come in and take a look at the video surveillance, assuring you that we didn't switch your chain. She would not let it go and was insisting that we reimburse her the money for her chain that we switched, that any other store would have done it. I politely let her know that we would be doing no such thing since there's no way we switched her chain. She said she was going to write me the nastiest Yelp review. That was a month ago. I'm still waiting for her to come in and demand her chain. She was clearly scamming since she did not want to see the videotapes and was expecting us to just pay her out. But as a small privately owned jewelry store, we can't just accept the customer is always right like the big corporate stores do. Story 51. I used to be a cashier at a local grocery store. We had a self-scan checkout. At night, very few employees were on. The store stayed open until 12 a.m., and after around 10:30 to 11, there were just 2 people working the front end. At around 11 p.m., one of the self-scan checkouts was blinking. There was a couple standing there waiting for someone to come assist them, so I go over and ask them what the problem was. They immediately seem nervous. I look at the items in the belt and compare them with the items on the screen. Something immediately doesn't add up. Every single item was rung up for $120 or so and was labeled as a markdown general merchandise item. But the things they were buying were all dairy, produce, and grocery products. Also, none of these items would ever be labeled as general merchandise, and I'd be hard-pressed to find they all rang up for $120. So I tell them, sorry, I need to void the transaction as there seems to be something wrong. Let me take your groceries to the next checkout so that you can get on your way and I'll sort the problem out. So we brought all their groceries over to another self-scan lane, and I personally rang out each item. The total came out to like $150 or so. They begrudgingly paid and went on their way. Apparently, they had ripped off a Gen Merch tag from one of our discount racks and pasted it to their hand to just swipe it and send an item down. The machine realized something was fishy when each item came up at the same price. Story 52. I worked at a fossil store for a while, and if customers brought in their fossil pieces, we would replace the batteries. So this guy brings in his watch, needs the battery replaced. No problem. I take his watch to the back and replace the battery, bring it out front and hand it to him. He looks at it for a moment, then looks at me and says, "That's not my watch." I didn't know what to say. I legit said to the guy, "I'm sorry, sir. I don't know what to tell you. That's your watch. It didn't leave my hands from the moment you gave it to me." He looks at it again and says, "No, that's not my watch." We spent a painfully awkward moment just staring at each other. I had no idea what to say, and then just sort of repeated the above interaction a few more times. Eventually I said, I can ask for clearance from my manager to show you the repair station if you want to take a look back there. My manager walks over and says, everything okay? And the guy just walks out the door. I still have no idea what he was trying to do. Story 53. Customers would come and say they were double charged. If we just did the transaction and we knew, we would refund them. But we also had those customers who would say they were double charged, but their purchasing was a while ago. We would apologize and say, okay, based on your receipt, we'll look on the tapes and grab their info. Of course, the ones up to no good would back out or leave fake info. A mom and her 5 young screaming kids went into a fitting room with piles of clothes. Our policy was only a certain number of items at a time and we'll help you. She had the nicest employee and yelled at him for following the policy. Tip-off number 1. He finally gave up and went to take a break from the mom. A bit later, she comes up to my register trying to engage in conversation. Tip-off number 2. I started scanning her items and what do you know, these $25 jeans were the price of a pink $5 scarf. I did not know what to do, so I called over my manager to take over as I had to pee really bad. When I came back, she was going all over the place to try and fluster my manager, but she had it under control. Piles of clothes, and she only left with 2 things and her 5 misbehaved children. A common technique would be a customer would attempt to return stolen/damaged items, and when they couldn't get their way, they would go to another department and attempt to return at their registers. By then, that department's registers got the heads up. Story 54. McDonald's here. So many stories to tell. It's like we're the opening boss in any RPG. Get past McDonald's with your scam and move on to bigger and better things. So, first story, we're closed for refurbishment, and some poor sap has to mind the store whilst the construction crew go about their merry way. Phone rings. Customary, are you the manager? I explain that I am indeed the manager, and after listening to a ramble about how we always F up his order, etc., he tells me that we didn't give him the Big Mac meal he ordered at lunchtime. I eagerly clarify that it was my store and that he came in lunchtime. Yes, he confirms. The silence when I tell him that we've been closed for 2 days was a thing of beauty. Oh, must be wrong store. Another customer comes in the store. I ordered a Fanta and the lid came off because you didn't put it on properly, and it ruined all my food, and I want you to replace my order. When was this, I asked? He explains it was last night, and I ask what he ordered, and it was 2 double quarter large meals. I'm thinking. So, do you have the receipt? No, he says. Do you have the food? No again. So I explain that there's unfortunately nothing I can do. He then loses it, starts screaming at me. You ain't gonna replace my food when you didn't put the lid on properly? It's your effing fault, blah blah blah. Nothing I can do, I repeat, maybe realizing he's met his match in this timeless battle of wits. Well, he then replies, and I got burnt. His face was priceless when I reminded him that he had said he had purchased a Fanta, and so his face wouldn't burn. And his walk of shame out of the restaurant empty-handed was a thing of real satisfaction. And then there was a time a lady brought a live parrot into the store. Yo, you can't leave us hanging with the live parrot in the store. I wanted to hear that. Come on. Please post a sequel. Story 55. I used to work the register at a liquor store. I ran the store alone Monday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Never had an issue, mostly served regulars in our small beach town. One day, a woman I've never seen before comes in and starts yapping about her life, saying she's from Canada and she just moved here and purchased a ranch and some horses, but she discovered a Mexican family squatting in one of the barns and her property is now tied up in some legal nonsense and she can't tend to her horses and they're sick and blah blah blah. I pretended to be sorry for her, even though I'm clearly of Mexican descent and she was being a little racist. She grabs a $7.50 of Fireball and says she needs it bad. Hands me some sort of cash card that our reader does not accept. She says, there's money on there, trust me. I told her she could go across the street to the ATM and come back and pay cash. She starts up again with the sob story, so I try the card again in case I didn't swipe it correctly. She takes this opportunity to open the bottle and chug it. Told her to leave. She took the bottle. Didn't call the cops because I was really young and scared and just wanted to forget about this unhinged woman. I bet she didn't even own a ranch. Story 56. I worked in a kiosk that sold pillow pets while I was in college. There are these pillows that you fold in half and then close with a Velcro strip and it looks like an animal. They were stupid popular for 1 year in like 2011 or something. There were 2 different versions of pillow pets. One that were made more cheaply by one manufacturer and sold in places like Target and Walmart, and ones that were a little nicer and sold in places like my kiosk. The ones sold in bigger stores were cheaper by like $8 or $9. And they also had fewer animal options. Really early on, we had people trying to exchange cheaper ones for ours. And once my boss caught on, he showed us the different tags on the different animals so that we could check every pillow that was returned to us and make sure it was really one of ours. One morning, this couple came in with a pillow pet and wanted to return it, but they didn't have the receipt. Because we were a small, locally owned shop, our boss was really picky about having receipts for returns. If they didn't have one, we could check their credit card in the system and see what they purchased. Very conveniently, they also didn't have their credit card with them. The woman started crying almost instantly after I told them I couldn't exchange it for them. She told me how they had driven an hour from their house because they bought the wrong animal and they just had to have the right one for their sick grandchild. The guy even tried raising his voice at me to get me to take it back. I knew they were trying to bullcrap me. So I said, as cheerily as possible, something to the effect of, "Oh, you know what? I can check the tag on the bottom of the pillow, and if it comes from the same manufacturer as our pillows, I'll exchange it for you." See, we've had people trying to buy the cheaper pillows at big box stores and then trying to swap them for ours. But we're the only retailer that sells the pillows from this manufacturer in northern Utah. So just let me check that tag and we can make this happen. They looked like deer in headlights. And the woman told me that if I was going to behave like this with customers, they were going to contact my boss and take their business elsewhere. And then they left. Story 57. Not as much a scam as abusing the system, but managed a very busy Blockbuster video back in the day. We had a system called FOS, Found on Shelf, which was basically a self-audit to make sure overdue movies weren't accidentally put back on the shelf without scanning them in. This check-in method automatically checked the items back in if they were returned on time. If I remember right, we check this daily. This one day, I get a rather angry-looking older lady in my line, brings up her movies to check out, and I pull her account. I inform her she still has overdue movies out, but before I can finish my sentence, she loses it over what was probably $6. Says, "I return those on time. I don't ever return movies late. You guys always forget to check in my movies when I bring them back." I pull her history, and sure enough, all of her check-ins for the last several months are flagged as FOS. Normally, I would have just credited the amount off and moved on, but this was super shady, and I didn't feel like appeasing her. Told her I'd go check for her movies and take care of it. Stop by the back room, rewind the security cam a hair to catch her walking in. Sure enough, there she is, coming in that night, overdue movies in hand, putting them back on the shelf as she grabs her next rentals. I give her credit for figuring out the system like that. So I immediately return to her to inform her we won't be serving her anymore, as we caught her on camera doing the aforementioned. Put a hold on her account. Prevents you from renting at the store as well as other locations. More petty than desperate, but still.